Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Government shutdown threatens to occur due to rising political tensions. Philippines suffers significant earthquake casualties and declares a state of calamity. Tony Blair seeks Gaza reconstruction role despite controversy. Donald Trump proposes using dangerous cities for military training. Trump removes BLS chief nomination over data issues. U.S. announces drug price reduction initiatives. Sudan civil war escalates in El-Fasher. UN increases force to address Haiti gang violence. Joseph Kabila receives death sentence in Absentia. EU addresses Russia's hybrid attacks with a security summit. Japan prepares to deploy Tomahawk missiles. Supreme Court delays decision on Fed governor's firing. India's EFTA trade deal impacts the economy. Rescue efforts continue after Indonesia's school collapse. Typhoon Bualoi causes extensive damage in Vietnam. Government shutdown looms as political tensions rise. A looming government shutdown dominates the political landscape as the United States faces a critical deadline, with no immediate resolution in sight. The primary cause of the impasse is a standoff between House Republicans and Democrats over funding for the government, fueled by deep divisions regarding healthcare policy and escalating political rhetoric. At the heart of the conflict is the Republican-led House's determination to defund the Department of Homeland Security, a move vehemently opposed by the Biden administration. Republicans are demanding stricter immigration enforcement measures, while Democrats argue that defunding DHS would jeopardize national security and harm vulnerable populations. Adding to the tension is the recent controversy surrounding former President Donald Trump's sharing of a racist, AI-generated video depicting House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries wearing a sombrero. This incident sparked outrage and further deepened the partisan divide. Representative Madeleine Dean confronted Speaker Mike Johnson on the House floor, directly challenging him to denounce the video and its racist implications. The potential consequences of a government shutdown are significant, affecting hundreds of thousands of federal employees who face furlough, disrupting essential services, and potentially impacting national security. Air traffic controllers, TSA employees, and other essential personnel would continue working, but with potential staffing shortages and longer wait times. Furthermore, the shutdown could delay or halt operations at national parks, impact veterans' services, and disrupt the distribution of Social Security and Medicare payments. The Biden administration is urging Congress to pass a short-term funding extension to avoid a shutdown, while House Republicans remain steadfast in their demands for stricter immigration enforcement. Negotiations between the two parties have stalled, with no clear path to a compromise emerging. The situation underscores the deep political polarization within the United States and the challenges facing lawmakers in finding common ground. The impending shutdown highlights the urgent need for a bipartisan solution to avert a prolonged disruption of government services and a potential economic impact. Philippines earthquake kills 69, declares state of calamity. A powerful 6.9 magnitude earthquake struck the central Philippines on Tuesday, resulting in at least 69 fatalities and widespread damage, prompting the declaration of a state of calamity in Cebu province. The quake, centered near Bogo, a town on the island of Cebu, occurred at 9:59 p.m. local time, triggering numerous aftershocks, including one at 4.7 magnitude, continuing to disrupt rescue and recovery efforts. Initial reports focused on Bogo, where the majority of the deaths occurred, with many residents spending the night on the streets due to damaged buildings and disrupted infrastructure. Communication lines were down, hindering updates from the affected areas, and electricity and water supplies were cut off. Residents reported widespread damage, including collapsed buildings, cracked roads, and fallen bridges, making access for emergency services extremely difficult. The government has appealed for medical volunteers to assist in treating the injured, with tent hospitals established to provide care. Rescue teams are prioritizing search and rescue operations, attempting to locate and assist those trapped beneath collapsed structures. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council initially reported 26 deaths and 147 injuries, with 22 buildings damaged. Dramatic footage circulated on social media showed a historic Catholic church in Bantayan Island, adorned with light bulbs partially collapsing, as well as a Cebu bridge violently shaking. Local television captured residents dismounting motorcycles due to the tremors. Governor Pamela Barracuetro urged residents to remain calm and move to open areas, avoiding collapsing structures and staying alert for aftershocks. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology reported 379 aftershocks. While the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center indicated no tsunami threat, the ongoing seismic activity poses a continued risk. The Philippines, situated on the Pacific Ring of Fire, experiences frequent earthquakes, highlighting the challenges posed by this natural hazard. The event underscores the vulnerability of communities in the region and the ongoing need for disaster preparedness and response measures. Former British PM Blair Vies for Gaza Reconstruction job amid controversy, and recent news highlights former British Prime Minister Tony Blair's appointment as a prospective head of an authority tasked with rebuilding Gaza, a move fraught with controversy given his past actions and perceived biases. Blair's extensive political experience, including brokering the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, positions him as a significant player in the region's future. However, his legacy is shadowed by his support for the Iraq War, a decision widely criticized and leading to significant diplomatic fallout. The appointment reflects a renewed international effort to address the crisis in Gaza. The Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, TTBI, has been heavily involved in developing post-conflict reconstruction scenarios, including proposals that sparked debate, notably one suggesting incentivizing Palestinians to relocate. Despite these controversial elements, Blair's connections within the Trump administration, particularly through Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, offer valuable access to key decision-makers. Critics remain skeptical, pointing to Blair's past stance and perceived pro-Israel bias. Hamas representatives, such as Husam Badran, view him as a criminal and destructive figure, citing his role in the Iraq War and his infrequent engagement with Gaza during his time as quartet envoy. Concerns persist regarding his potential influence on the rebuilding process and the overall direction of Gaza's future. Despite these reservations, Blair's appointment signals a strategic attempt to leverage his diplomatic skills and establish networks to foster a more stable and secure environment in Gaza. The TBI's involvement suggests a focus on pragmatic, internationally backed reconstruction, while the potential for collaboration with the Trump administration underscores the complex geopolitical dynamics at play. The appointment remains a contentious one, reflecting the deep divisions and unresolved issues surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Trump advocates for utilizing dangerous cities as military training grounds during a speech delivered to a gathering of top military leaders and admirals at Marine Corps Base Quantico, Virginia. President Donald Trump outlined his strategy for utilizing dangerous cities as training grounds for the U.S. military and National Guard. He specifically referenced Chicago, stating his intention to deploy forces there soon, citing the state's governor as incompetent. Trump's remarks were part of a broader effort to reshape the Department of Defense, suggesting a shift towards a warrior ethos. Central to Trump's vision is a response to incidents of disrespect towards military personnel, particularly instances of individuals spitting on soldiers. He advocated for a policy of retaliation, stating, "They spit, we hit." This reflects a desire to demonstrate strength and deter disrespect. Furthermore, Trump proposed a loosening of restrictions on military personnel's actions when faced with attacks on vehicles. He suggested officers should be authorized to do whatever the hell they want in such situations, implying a greater degree of autonomy and a willingness to use force proactively. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, echoed Trump's sentiments, emphasizing the need for a male-level, physical fitness standard for military officials and a cultural shift away from woke policies. Hegseth's reforms include a focus on fitness, ability, and character rather than protecting feelings. Trump also touched upon his record, claiming to have settled 7 wars and expressing a desire for a potential 8th if Hamas accepts his proposed plan for Gaza. He highlighted the Department of War rebranding as a historic reassertion of our purpose, our identity, and our pride. The event was marked by a largely silent audience of generals and admirals, many taking notes during Hegseth's address. Trump's comments underscored a strategy of assertive defense and a rejection of what he perceives as weakness or political correctness. The emphasis on preparedness and decisive action reflects a core element of Trump's approach to national security. Trump withdraws BLS chief nomination amid data controversy. The White House has withdrawn its nomination of economist E.J. Antoni to lead the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, following a series of events centered around concerns about data accuracy and a troubling digital history. Initially nominated after the firing of BLS Commissioner Erica McIntarfer, who was accused of manipulating job numbers, Antoni's selection faced immediate scrutiny. McIntarfer's dismissal stemmed from a weak July jobs report, prompting significant downward revisions to previous month's estimates. Antoni, an economist at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, was a staunch critic of the BLS, frequently questioning its data and accusing it of phony baloney. His digital footprint, however, revealed a pattern of inflammatory and offensive online activity, including sexually degrading attacks and conspiracy theories, prompting concerns about his suitability for the role. The White House initially defended Antony, but did not address the problematic content. The Senate Health, Education, Labor and Pensions Committee, chaired by Senator Bill Cassidy, indicated that Antony's confirmation hearing had not been formally noticed, a strong signal that the nomination was being withdrawn. The BLS, an independently operated agency within the Department of Labor, tracks monthly revisions to its data, a process that has historically involved significant adjustments, particularly since the implementation of a new probability-based sampling design in 2003. Despite these revisions, which have averaged 51,000 jobs since 2003, compared to 61,000 jobs before, the BLS remains a crucial source of economic data. The agency's revisions are particularly important given the increasing speed of global markets. The White House's decision to pull Antony's nomination reflects growing concerns about the politicization of economic data and the need for an independent and credible data source. The Heritage Foundation affirmed Antony's continued role at the think tank, emphasizing his commitment to advocating for BLS reform. The BLS continues to be overseen by a Senate-confirmed commissioner, maintaining its independent operation within the Department of Labor. Trump administration announces drug price reduction initiatives. The Trump administration is implementing a multifaceted strategy to lower prescription drug costs in the United States, spearheaded by the creation of a direct-to-consumer website, TrumpArcs, and agreements with pharmaceutical companies. Pfizer is the first company to participate, offering discounted prices to Medicaid recipients and avoiding tariffs. This initiative follows a 100% tariff announcement set to commence on October 1st, contingent upon drug manufacturers establishing U.S. manufacturing plants. The administration is leveraging the federal government to drastically reduce Medicaid costs, anticipating further deals with other drug makers. A key component is the most favored nation policy, revived by President Trump, aiming for drug prices to align with those in peer countries. This policy involves directing drug makers to offer U.S. patients the lowest prices they provide globally. The HHS has issued price targets within 30 days, and the FDA is tasked with modifying or revoking approvals if drugs are unsafe, ineffective, or improperly marketed. To facilitate direct patient access, the TrumpRx website is being launched, mirroring similar direct purchase programs already established by companies like Novo Nordisk, offering Ozempic for $499 without insurance. The Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, PRMA, has also rolled out America's Medicines, connecting patients with manufacturers' direct purchase programs. However, the drug industry warns that most favored nation directives could harm American leadership and negatively impact patients and workers. Industry experts question the policy's effectiveness, noting that the president lacks legal authority to mandate price reductions and that manufacturers may instead raise prices internationally. Several companies, including Eli Lilly and Bristol Myers Squibb, have already announced price increases in the UK to offset higher prices in the US. The administration's efforts are responding to the significant disparity in drug prices between the US and other developed nations, where costs are nearly 3 times higher. Despite these initiatives, the prospect of substantial price reductions remains uncertain, given the complexities of the pharmaceutical market and the industry's resistance to regulatory intervention. The strategy represents a significant, albeit contested, effort to address a long-standing healthcare challenge. The Digest Sudan civil war intensifies in El-Fasher. The ongoing civil war in Sudan, primarily between the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, and the Sudanese army, continues to escalate with devastating consequences for the city of El-Fasher in Darfur. The RSF has made significant territorial gains, spearheaded by increasingly sophisticated drone technology, allegedly supplied by the United Arab Emirates, despite UAE denials. These advances aim to secure strategic advantages, including access to fuel from Libya, bolstering their control over the western border region stretching from South Sudan to Egypt. This expanded control would enable attacks on Kordofan regions, and potentially even a renewed assault on Khartoum. The situation in El-Fasher is dire, with tens of thousands trapped amidst intense fighting, and a siege that has severely impacted civilian life. Medical facilities are overwhelmed and under attack, resulting in critical shortages of supplies and personnel. Numerous casualties have been reported, including the deaths of over 75 people in a mosque attack attributed to the RSF, despite the group's denial. The RSF's actions are fueled by a desire to secure constituencies within Darfur, representing a fight for political survival. Local armed groups, known as the Joint Forces, are also heavily invested in this struggle for control of Darfur. The RSF's attempts to portray a more benevolent image through videos of assisting fleeing civilians are viewed with skepticism, given the ongoing atrocities. Hundreds of thousands have been displaced from El-Fasher, facing violence, robbery, and death as they attempt to escape. The UN warns of further atrocities if the RSF gains full control of the city. The conflict is deeply rooted in ethnic tensions, particularly between the RSF and the Zagawa community. The relentless fighting has resulted in widespread destruction and the loss of lives, creating a humanitarian crisis of immense proportions. Many remain trapped, facing an uncertain future, haunted by memories of a lost home and the constant threat of violence. UN approves expanded force to combat Haiti gang violence. The United Nations Security Council has authorized a significantly expanded international security force for Haiti, aimed at confronting the country's spiraling gang violence. This gang suppression force, a GSF, will encompass up to 550 police and military personnel, granting them the authority to detain individuals suspected of gang affiliation. This expansion represents a critical response to the escalating crisis within Haiti. The GSF is intended to bolster the existing Kenyan-led Multinational Security Support Mission, MSS, which initially aimed for 500 members, but has consistently fallen short of its objectives. Since its deployment in 2023, the MSS has been unable to effectively curb the violence. In 2024 alone, over 500 people have lost their lives due to gang-related incidents. Currently, gangs control approximately 85% of Port-au-Prince, Haiti's capital, contributing to widespread instability. The decision to increase the force's size was prompted by the ongoing humanitarian and security challenges facing the nation. A recent U.S. proposed resolution, adopted by the UN Security Council on Tuesday, formally approved the expansion. The current MSS, numbering less than 1,000 officers, has struggled to contain the well-armed Haitian gangs. The new force's mandate includes collaborating with Haitian authorities to provide security and facilitate humanitarian access. Recent additions to the MSS, including a new contingent of 218 Kenyan police officers deployed in January, underscore the international community's commitment to addressing the situation. Haiti's instability stems from a confluence of factors, including economic chaos, a political vacuum following the assassination of its president in 2021, and the pervasive influence of heavily armed gangs. The UN's enhanced force represents a significant, though not guaranteed, step toward restoring order and stability in the country. Joseph Kabila sentenced to death in absentia for war crimes and treason. Former Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, President Joseph Kabila has been sentenced to death in absentia by a Congolese court for war crimes, treason, and crimes against humanity. The charges stem from accusations of supporting the M23 rebel group responsible for widespread devastation in the country's eastern region. The conviction, announced Friday, encompassed charges including murder, sexual assault, torture, and insurrection. Kabila vehemently rejected the proceedings, labeling them arbitrary and asserting that the courts were being utilized as an instrument of oppression. His current location remains unknown. Kabila, 54, governed DRC for 18 years following his father Laurent's assassination in 2001. He transferred power to President Félix Tshisekedi in 2019, but relations deteriorated, leading to Kabila's self-imposed exile in 2023. Notably, he returned in May, expressing a desire to contribute to resolving the ongoing conflict in the east, even visiting the M23-held city of Goma. This action prompted President Tshisekedi to accuse Kabila of orchestrating the M23's activities, resulting in the stripping of his legal immunity and enabling his prosecution. Decades of conflict, exacerbated by the M23's recent territorial gains including Goma, Bukavu, and 2 airports, have fueled instability. The United Nations and several Western nations have presented substantial evidence implicating neighboring Rwanda in backing the M23, with thousands of Rwandan soldiers reportedly operating within DRC. However, Rwanda denies these accusations, stating its actions are intended to prevent the conflict from spreading across its borders. Despite a ceasefire agreement reached in July, violence persists. The situation is complex, involving accusations of foreign support, internal rebel activity, and ongoing instability within the DRC. The legal proceedings against Kabila represent a significant step in addressing the long-standing conflict, though his whereabouts remain a key unknown factor. EU leaders confront Russia's hybrid attacks. Denmark hosts Security Summit, following a series of Russian drone incursions targeting European airspace, including disruptions at Danish airports and airspace violations over Poland and Estonia. EU leaders are convening in Copenhagen to address the escalating threat. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen emphasized that Russia is the sole country demonstrably willing to threaten Europe, demanding a strong response. Denmark has significantly bolstered security measures, including a complete ban on civilian drone flights until Friday and stringent traffic restrictions in Copenhagen, alongside support from 10 allied nations providing anti-drone and surveillance assistance. These countries include Poland, the UK, the Netherlands, Finland, Sweden, and the US, with a German frigate also docked in Copenhagen. The situation has prompted a coordinated response, with Sweden loaning powerful radar systems to Denmark and Ukraine, sending a mission for joint drone defense exercises. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz acknowledged the worsening situation, attributing the drone activity to Russia. These events have triggered two consultations under Article 4 of the NATO Treaty, highlighting the severity of the threat. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte underscored the need to safeguard European skies. The concept of a drone wall, initially proposed by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, is being actively considered as a multi-layered defense system. However, questions remain regarding the financing and command and control aspects of the plan. Concerns are mounting about the escalating hybrid warfare tactics employed by Russia, prompting a period of serious soul-searching within the EU regarding its security strategy. The situation has forced a shift towards greater agility and the exploration of more cost-effective defense solutions, recognizing that traditional missile deployments are insufficient against relatively inexpensive drones. Dmitry Peskov dismissed accusations of Russian involvement, claiming Germany's indirect involvement in the Ukraine conflict and rejecting the drone wall concept. The events have spurred a renewed focus on NATO's role and the importance of collective defense measures in the face of evolving security challenges. Japan to deploy Tomahawk missiles amidst regional arms race. Japan is significantly bolstering its defense capabilities by equipping its warship, the JS Chokai, with U.S.-made Tomahawk cruise missiles, marking a critical escalation in the Pacific region's military buildup. This move is driven by growing concerns regarding China's expanding military power and North Korea's missile development, alongside a shift in Japan's security strategy. The Chokai, an Aegis-equipped destroyer, will undergo a year-long deployment in the U.S., receiving training and modifications to enable the launch of these missiles, capable of striking targets up to 1,000 miles away. The acquisition of 400 Tomahawks represents a substantial investment by Japan, reflecting Defense Minister Gen Nakatani's assessment of the most severe and complex security environment since World War II. China's military activities, particularly concerning the disputed Senkaku Islands, are identified as the greatest strategic challenge to Japan. Beijing's recent display of advanced weaponry, including anti-ship missiles, alongside the presence of Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin at a military parade, further underscored regional tensions. The Tomahawk's offensive capabilities, specifically its designation as a deep land attack warfare weapon, are a key factor in this shift. Australia is also pursuing the acquisition of 200 Tomahawks, demonstrating a broader trend among naval powers. The successful firing of a Tomahawk by the HMAS Brisbane off the U.S. West Coast last December highlighted the growing operational capabilities of these missiles. Japan intends to have the Chokai ready for actual missions by next summer involving live fire testing. The 528-foot-long destroyer possesses 90 vertical launch cells, adaptable for various missile types, including anti-ballistic missiles and anti-submarine rockets. The Tomahawk's proven track record, with over 2,000 combat deployments, including recent submarine-launched attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities, solidifies its role in Japan's defense strategy. This deployment is intended to enhance Japan's ability to intercept and eliminate invading forces at long range, contributing to regional stability while simultaneously fueling concerns about an escalating arms race. Supreme Court defers decision on Fed governor firing, maintaining Cook's position. The Supreme Court has granted a significant reprieve to Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, agreeing to hear arguments regarding President Donald Trump's attempt to remove her from the board. Cook will remain in her position until the court's oral arguments scheduled for January, effectively halting Trump's immediate dismissal request. This decision represents a notable departure, as the court has rarely intervened to prevent the president from removing federal officials. The case centers on allegations of mortgage fraud involving Cook's reported ownership of 2 residences, a claim she vehemently denies as manufactured. Initially, a federal court blocked Trump's attempt to fire Cook, citing a lack of evidence demonstrating harm to the board or public interest. However, Trump pursued an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court. Cook's arguments emphasize the potential damage to the Federal Reserve's independence and the potential for market disruption should the court side with Trump. This highlights the ongoing tension between the executive and monetary branches of the U.S. government. The Supreme Court's decision reflects a recognition of the Federal Reserve's unique status, acknowledging its distinct historical tradition and uniquely structured nature. This contrasts with the court's previous allowance of Trump to fire leaders at other agencies, such as the Federal Trade Commission, without requiring justification. The case is part of a broader Supreme Court examination of presidential power over independent agencies. The court is revisiting the 1935 Humphreys Executor v. U.S. decision, which established the precedent allowing presidents to require cause before dismissing board members of independent agencies. Trump's attempts to influence the Federal Reserve, particularly concerning interest rates, have been a contentious issue. The Fed recently lowered its benchmark interest rate, a move Cook supported. The Supreme Court's intervention underscores the importance of maintaining the Fed's operational independence. The court's ultimate decision will have lasting implications for the future of monetary policy and the balance of power within the U.S. government. India's EFTA trade deal takes effect, ushering in economic shifts. India's landmark trade and economic partnership agreement, TPE, with the European Free Trade Association, EFTA, encompassing Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, officially came into effect on Wednesday, marking a significant step in India's trade strategy. This agreement is notable for directly linking market access with substantial investment pledges, a strategic shift in trade negotiation approaches. The core of the agreement involves India reducing tariffs on 80–85% of goods from EFTA nations to zero, while simultaneously granting 99% duty-free access to Indian exporters across EFTA markets. A key outcome is the anticipated reduction in prices for Indian consumers, particularly regarding Swiss chocolates and wines, which are expected to become more affordable. Simultaneously, EFTA countries will benefit from zero tariffs on goods like medicines, dyes, textiles, and iron and steel products over a 5 to 10 year period. India's imports from EFTA countries totaled $32.4 billion last year, with Switzerland accounting for a third of that figure, including a substantial $18 billion in gold imports, where duties remain unchanged. Exports to EFTA nations reached $2 billion, primarily consisting of industrial goods already exempt from tariffs. Experts, such as Ajay Shrivastava from Global Trade Research Initiative, GTRI, suggest that any gains may stem from this deal's signaling effect, demonstrating India's commitment to liberalization. India is actively pursuing other trade agreements, including a free trade agreement, FTA, with the UK slated for 2026, and ongoing negotiations with the European Union, which currently represents India's largest trading partner in goods, with bilateral trade exceeding $135 billion in 2022-23. The deal arrives amidst ongoing trade talks with the United States, where tariffs remain in place, further highlighting India's efforts to diversify its trade relationships and mitigate potential economic impacts. The agreement's success will be closely monitored as it unfolds and impacts India's economic landscape. Indonesia's school collapse rescue efforts continue amidst conflicting data. A desperate race to rescue survivors continues in Sidoarjo, Indonesia, following the collapse of the Al-Khwarizmi Islamic boarding school on Monday, resulting in at least 4 deaths and the injury of approximately 100 people. Rescuers are battling precarious conditions as they attempt to reach dozens still trapped under the rubble, facing challenges from ongoing instability and conflicting data regarding the number of victims. Initial estimates varied significantly, ranging from 38 to 140 students believed to be inside the building at the time of the collapse. Search and rescue operations, spearheaded by Basarnas, are hampered by the unstable nature of the debris and the risk of further collapse. A tunnel is being constructed to reach one trapped survivor, while teams carefully remove concrete slabs, acutely aware of the potential for landslides and additional damage. Civil engineering experts warn of the danger posed by even minor vibrations. Confusion reigns regarding the precise number of individuals trapped, with authorities struggling to reconcile differing reports. The National Disaster Management Agency, BNPB, initially cited 38, later increasing the estimate to 91, reflecting the difficulties in assessing the situation. This inconsistency has fueled frustration among families anxiously awaiting news and demanding greater transparency from officials. 2 students were successfully pulled from the rubble, one of whom succumbed to his injuries in hospital. 13 individuals have been freed from the debris, but 2 others died in hospital on Tuesday. The school's management is facing scrutiny for adding 2 extra floors to the building on unstable foundations, a factor contributing to the disaster. The Sidoarjo Regent has confirmed the school lacked necessary permits for the construction. Despite the challenges, rescuers are prioritizing the safety of those trapped, meticulously assessing the risk of further collapse before undertaking any excavation. The situation remains critical, with ongoing efforts focused on stabilization and the extraction of survivors. Authorities are urging patience while they continue to gather accurate data and coordinate rescue efforts. The lack of clear information and the perilous conditions underscore the urgency of the operation and the vulnerability of those still buried beneath the wreckage. Vietnam grapples with extensive flood damage following Typhoon Bualoi. Typhoon Bualoi has caused widespread devastation, and triggered a massive cleanup operation in Vietnam's Lian province, leaving residents struggling to recover from extensive flood damage. The storm, which made landfall on September 28, unleashed torrential rainfall and destructive winds, leading to significant inundation across the region. Reports indicate that the hardest-hit area is Ninh An, where many communities were submerged in water reaching waist-deep levels. The immediate aftermath saw residents undertaking arduous tasks of salvaging personal belongings and attempting to remove waterlogged furniture and appliances from their homes. Numerous houses sustained partial damage due to the flooding, with significant portions of the interiors saturated with water. The extent of the damage is considerable, highlighting the storm's intensity and the vulnerability of communities to extreme weather events. Reuters reported on September 30th that residents were actively engaged in the cleanup, wading through the floodwaters and prioritizing the removal of damaged items. The situation is particularly challenging for those living in low-lying areas, where the flooding was most severe. Local authorities are working to assess the full extent of the damage and coordinate relief efforts, including providing emergency supplies and support to affected families. The cleanup operation represents a prolonged and demanding undertaking, reflecting the scale of the disaster. The focus is now on facilitating the restoration of normalcy for the residents of Ninh An province, who are facing the difficult task of rebuilding their lives and homes following the devastating impact of Typhoon Bualoi. The long-term consequences of the storm, including potential damage to infrastructure and agricultural lands, are yet to be fully determined.